Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I am letting everybody in so long. I know that there is no coffee being given in the reception in the waiting room. The bad part of being in a virtual office, hey? So I hope you guys have a cup of coffee available. I hope you have some water and that you are ready for this morning session. Please drop us in the chat so long a good morning and where you are from. It's always nice to see who's our crowd this morning. We are expecting quite a few people. A lot of people have registered. So yes, welcome, Tinus. It's so nice to connect with everyone again. Good morning, Sherry. Hello, Rita, Catherine. I wanted to say, I'm going to put on background music, but I was worried I'm mess up something. So I thought, okay, now you guys have to listen to my voice. Hello, Gina. Lorraine, haven't spoken to you in a long time. Oh, and everybody, of course, knows Johan. Johan is there. And Zala, of course, in the very beginning said, good morning. It's always great to have my team members on board. Um, oh, Sharon, look just how beautiful you look like this morning, huh? Brave enough to put on the camera. I love it. Okay. So I have the controls this morning while Sean is waiting so that I can get everybody up. Let's see. Make sure that I don't leave anyone in the waiting room. I'm so glad the sun is shining. I hope everybody else is happy about it as well. There we go. It's so exciting. We've got a nice mix of people this morning. We've got clients that's been with us for a very long time. And then we've got new clients, and then we've got people thinking of becoming clients. Morning, morning. We've got Sean here as well.
Good
He is
morning,
here.
everyone.
Sean, I said to them, I don't know how to put on background music, so I'm talking to them to make things entertaining while we are admitting everyone.
Well,
Good
that's
morning, Annelie.
as long as you don't sing, I'm happy.
Oh, yes. Simon Cowell, I'll make cry.
Yeah,
You know, that's how bad my singing is.
and
Um,
if I start singing, we'll clear the group very quickly. So at the end, I might start singing if we if we have people hanging on.
Good morning, Elise and everybody.
Morning,
Thank you.
everybody.
So all the new people that's logging in, please drop us your name, say good morning, tell us where you're from. We are all property professionals in this group. It's always nice to help each other and just share some ideas. And of course, we have Sean today sharing his absolute great knowledge. I always learn from Sean. We've got some debate sometimes. It's always fun to have a lawyer and an agent really arguing about stuff. Um, but I think it's that's where it's always great to have business and law come together.
But I mean,
Morning, morning.
we don't argue; we have discussions.
That's why I love that. I think I should come to Cape Town again, so that we
Oh,
can have
it's lucky when
wine
you
and
come to Cape Town
more.
because then I get lunch at a restaurant.
No, I said that's what I'm saying. We can have wine and discussions.
Well, I'm actually
Tabo,
thinking.
welcome. Welcome, Tabo. Sorry, Sean, from the Chartwell group. It's nice to see you guys.
I'm going to
Kendall, I
launch.
saw you also coming in. Yes, sorry, Sean.
So, no, sorry, Elise. I'm talking in your space. Um, oh no, it is my space. We've gone past 9. I'm just going to launch a poll about written versus verbal mandates. Is that okay with you?
Yes, you guys can run that poll.
Okay.
Morning, Carol.
Now I've
So
just
there's a,
Sorry, that
Yeah.
this poll is anonymous, just so that people know. So I'd like your feedback. I just want to get an idea of who's actually doing written mandates and who is working on verbal mandates for whatever reasoning there is. And we will be touching on this in the presentation.
Okay. Oh, we've got people from Durban. That's exciting. Welcome, Natalie. That's exciting. Shadrach, it's nice to see you as well. Yeah, this is nice about Zoom. Hey, we can get connected. I can't drive to everyone always to see everyone.
Yes.
Although now that lockdown is lifted, I'm definitely going to make a plan to get to all my agents again, and go see them and drop off some goodies. But it's always nice to meet people on Zoom again. Let's see. We are still waiting for a few people. I'm admitting them as they're coming in.
Do you want
If
me
I can
to
ask every.
do you want me to take the
Yes.
waiting room off, Elise?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It helps me keep an eye on who's coming in.
Well, that's good because you're managing it. It's fine. I can't multitask, eh?
The benefits of being a woman, hey?
Well, no, the benefit of me having an assistant.
You see, and I'm a good assistant. I'm a very good assistant.
You're not doing too badly so far.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. So, guys, we're going to start formally at 9:10. Just to give the last people time to connect and come up. Please have a look at the poll. Sean, are we also be able to get an indication who are agents, who are owners, and who does, I'm quite curious, does all the people on here only do sales, only do rentals, or do they do rentals and sales?
Okay.
Now I have to go think about my wording.
Now, I don't know if I can create a poll now, can I?
I don't know. I'll tell you what, I will go and play with it while you talk.
Okay. I don't seem to be able to, because I've got a poll running, I don't seem to be able to do anything more. In terms of the who's agent, who's owners, etc., when people registered, we asked those questions. So I did send that, sorry, to put you on the spot. I did send that yesterday. And on that, it says who's agents and who's owners. I mean, who's agents, who's rental managers and owners. So I didn't create a poll for that as well. My apologies.
No. I mean, I know you're much more organized than I am. Tendai, it's nice to see your face. Luckily, we haven't connected that long ago. Natalie Farson, I hope I'm saying your surname correctly. Not to put you on the spot, but happy birthday. I know it's your birthday today. So I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. And you get spoiled. And I think we have to ask your principal if you can sneak away a bit earlier and go have a cup of coffee and a piece of cake. Hello, Willem. Nice to meet you. Zelda's popping up. Everybody must probably have met Zelda somewhere in all of the conversations. It's nice to see the whole CE group being on here as well. That's always good news. Sean?
Yes.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the formal introduction. We've got much more registrations than the people that's currently logged in, but I also know everybody is super busy. So we definitely don't want to delay anyone because they have to wait. So people can just, I'll just let them enjoy the calls.
Sorry, I can't see everything at the moment, Elise. How many people do we have logged in? I've got 36 here.
Yeah, right? 36.
Okay.
Yeah, a whole bottle of tomato sauce.
What?
All Gold tomato sauce. All Gold has got 36 tomatoes and a bottle of tomato sauce. I'm not promoting or advertising All Gold. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule. I know time is money, but also I know that, if we have knowledge, we can grow our businesses. And Xpello is all about helping agents growing their businesses. And what we've seen in the past is it always helps to talk about things that is really relevant. Or people, I know people have spoken about mandates many times, and still people don't always see the importance about that. And that's why I asked Sean, who's got lots of experience about the practical side of it and what can go wrong. I think that's the best part. So that's why I've got Sean here today to a bit go into the mandate workshop. I am gonna put off my face. You guys can, in the bottom, there's a chat box. You can please drop in your questions in the chat box. If you're worried that people might judge you about your question, you're welcome to send me a private message. I will not divulge your name when I ask the question. So it's really an open forum. You can ask me that we get the questions out there, because sometimes, you've got a question, there's a good possibility somebody else is also wondering about the same thing. So definitely get in there. Michelle, good morning. Um, Sean, over to you. Thank you for being here this morning.
You're most welcome, and thank you for inviting me. Just checking with you before your face goes. The presentation is on the screen, and I'm up in the corner only now.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, guys, welcome. Thank you very much. Just to give you a quick background about me, I've probably been in property rentals close on to about 20 years now. Started in New Zealand, ended up here due to family reasons, and had to get to grips with the particularly tricky laws. And so yes, I've been around for a while. Part of what I think contribute, or I hope I contribute, is the fact that most things that can go wrong have probably gone wrong with me, or in the business when I've been working in the business, and I've had to find solutions. And as a result, I've generally worked on documented procedures, etc., to try and avoid as many of those avoidable problems as possible. So now let's get started. The very first thing is we did that poll about the verbal versus written mandates. Thank you, guys. The results of the poll are 80% of the people voted, and 55% of the votes say that we always get a written mandate before we advertise the rental property. 21%, let's say around about a quarter, say mostly. 17% say sometimes, and 7% say no. So I'm not going to do that poll again. I've just entered the poll. I've just shared the results too. I didn't know I could share the results. Okie dokes. So let's get going. The intention of today is a workshop. Okay. So if you have any questions, please pop them through to Elise so she can disturb me. The idea is that we deal with real life situations of what's happened. Now, also, I have created a post on my Facebook page. If you go to Sean Late, you look for my Facebook page, I have said that we are doing the mandate workshop there. Please feel free to go to that page and pop a like or whatever there. I thought I could copy the post URL, but I can't. So the next poll has to do with which mandate, and I'm asking these questions just so that we can get some ideas here. Now, I just want to see how I do the next poll. Sorry, let me just see if I can get, I don't know how to, wait, sorry. Which mandate template do you use? Or do you have your own written one? So I've popped that up in the questions now, Elise, if you can just remind me that we'll have a look at that later. It's just to get some ideas of what's happening out there in the market. So let's talk about now, get into the mandate essentials, the fundamentals. For those of you that have been around a while, this might be a little bit boring, but I think that every now and again, going back to basics is good, because as we carry on, we're not going to worry about that poll. So what is a mandate? And this is something, people talk about a mandate as if it's this foreign thing. So I've gone back to the basics, and I've gone back specifically to the EAAB Code of Conduct. And I know nobody likes the EAAB, but unfortunately their Code of Conduct does flow out of the Estate Agents Affairs Act, which is an act of parliament. So whether we like it or not, we have to adhere by it, or we face consequences. So a mandate is an instruction or an authority. In other words, it's permission given to and accepted by there's an offer, in other words, and acceptance by an estate agent to render estate agent service. That's all it is. We talk about a mandate and people make it sound like a foreign special thing, no? But all it is the owner of the property gives permission to the agent, and the agent accepts that permission or that authority or those instructions. That's all it really is. And the estate agency service has to do with what are the T's and C's of your mandate. Who's going to do what? When are you going to do it? What are you going to do? What aren't you going to do? That sort of stuff. So it's really just essentially then the contract. If we come to offer and acceptance, because you'll see that it says an instruction or authority given to and accepted by. And Elise is cleverer than me in these things, but when you make an offer and there's acceptance, it becomes a contract. That's one of the basic concepts of contracts. So an instructional authority is given to and accepted by the agent. So then we have a contract in place. Whether it is, and coming back to that first poll, whether it is verbal or written, the bottom line is once you've accepted it, we have a contract in place, and that contract is subject to some or other terms and conditions. Estate agency service is defined in the Estate Agents Affairs Act. We're not going to go into that. Suffice to say, rentals is an estate agency service. Now, another thing in the EAB Code of Conduct is that no estate agent shall offer, purport, or attempt to offer any immovable property to let, in other words, advertise for rent, which is why I asked that question up front. Do you get a mandate before you advertise for rent? I specifically said written mandate though, and we'll talk about that just now. So we may not offer, we may not advertise for rent or negotiate in connection therewith. In other words, draw up a lease agreement, negotiate lease terms, etc., or canvass or undertake or offer to canvass, which I think refers to direct marketing, because when you're canvassing, you're most courting people. Né? A lessee, therefore, in other words, a tenant, unless they've been given a mandate, permission to do so by the lessor of the property, in other words, by the landlord or his duly authorized agent. So we may not advertise for rent. This is my interpretation. We may not advertise for rent because all that goeders means advertise for rent. So we may not advertise a property for rent or direct market it unless we have the or start putting together a lease or negotiating in terms of a lease, unless we have that permission from the landlord. You'll notice there is no requirement that it must be in writing. So there is no legal requirement that it must be in writing. The second part there, by the way, is really just the opposite. In other words, nobody may go and find a rental property for somebody. In other words, it's a tenant mandate, but I don't think we deal much with that, so we're not going to get into it. So the next question is, and you guys can just pop this in the chat, when does a mandate need to be in writing? Is there any circumstances when a mandate needs to be in writing? Does anybody know that? Or is anybody willing to venture that?
Nobody is brave enough as yet.
Yeah, I can see my chat here. The chat's still on my screen, so I see that nobody's brave enough. That's fine, because I did the homework for you. There's no requirement for a mandate as such to be in writing unless it's a sole mandate. A sole mandate is where there is an undertaking of the part of the person giving the mandate. In other words, the landlord, okay? Not to give the same authority or permission. Oopsie, oh, sorry. This poll, my screen's getting a bit full with all these goeders here. Okay. Not to confer a similar mandate on another estate agent before that one's expired. So it's only when there is a sole mandate that it has to be in writing. Okay, this is the legal position, but we're going to talk about the practical position soon. Now, I'm just going to go quickly, and I'm going to end this poll that we had and share the results, and then I will close that one. Sorry, I'm just going to get out of there. Okay, because that was getting in my way. So let's talk a little bit more about this contractual relationship, because often I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding or misunderstandings. And so what we're talking about here is a contractual relationship between the landlord or the property owner and the rental agency. This is important, an agency, not the specific agent. And I've seen, sometimes when there's issues, clients come to me and say to me, Sean, I've got this problem. Can you help me solve it? Or can you give me some advice? And I say, okie dokie, pop me a copy of the mandate. And then it's got the landlord's name written there and the agent, John Smith. And I'm like, whoa, but the agent is not authorized to enter into a mandate. It's only a company license that entitles you to enter into a mandate, because that's how it's defined. So it's the contract, because an agent has to most work under a principal which belongs to a company. So it's the contract between the landlord or the property owner and a real estate agency. The landlord engages the agency to carry out certain duties, and those duties are specified, okay, in the landlord. And these duties and obligations, you get them on both sides. Everybody always focuses on agent's responsibilities, and I think sometimes the mandate focuses too much on the agent's responsibilities, because the landlord also has responsibilities. And often we hear these things where landlord's not fixing this, landlord's not fixing this. We can solve this within our mandate if we write it in, or we can have an opportunity where we can fire our landlord, so to speak, if we write it into the mandate. A mandate doesn't have to be one of those standard formats. The standard format is a good template to start off with often, but you might have your own specific requirements dependent on the market you're working in, as well as dependent on the type of, or the end of the market, let's say the position of the market you're working in, or the area you're working in. Do you deal with a lot of student accommodation? You might need some special stuff written in. Remember, this is where this is what governs the landlord agent relationship. So the landlord engages the agency to carry out certain duties on his or her behalf in exchange for a fee. I mean, we all love what we do now, or most of us, I think, love what we do. However, we don't love it that much. We're doing it for free. So the reality is that the landlord's main obligation is to pay us for doing our duty. So that's important, is that this works both ways. But I think often in the mandates I see, the only obligation the landlord has is to pay. There aren't things like they need to deal with maintenance, for example, in a specific time period, etc., etc. And I think it's important to reconsider that and say, should we not be having this in here? Because I often deal with, and one often sees on public forums, posts that say things like, the landlord's not doing the maintenance and the place is getting run down and I can't deal with, all of this. Why not put a certain obligation on the landlord, so that if they do not perform, remember, we're talking about a contract here. And this is where, and I'm going to go into this slightly, no, I'm going to go into this later, but this is where, in my mind, verbal mandates cause the most problems, because all we know is that the landlord has given us the authority to market, or has given us a mandate verbally now. But the two of us, our minds haven't met, because we have an idea of what the authority is, but the landlord has a different idea. They now thinking we're going to do all of that chutas, and sometimes they think we're going to go and clean their property and all sorts of silly things, okay? So that's the problem, is that we don't have a meeting of the minds, so to speak. In other words, we're not on the same page, is a simple way to say that, because the landlord has an idea of what an agent does, we have an idea of what the agent does, but it's not the same thing. Or we specifically maybe end here and the landlord doesn't understand that. So we need to know and understand our specific rental mandate so we can explain it to the landlord. There's a requirement under the Consumer Protection Act that any contract has to be explained to the consumer. And actually, while I'm going to the Consumer Protection Act, let's someone put that in there. Remember here that the agency is the supplier of a service, and the landlord is the consumer of the service. So the Consumer Protection Act protects the landlord in this particular case. So we have the consumer being protected in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, which then applies. So we need to be aware of that. But remember that can work both ways. But it's important to understand that we're supplying the service. That consumer can cancel on 20 business days notice, etc., etc., etc. You know, all those quitters that come from the Consumer Protection Act. But it's important to understand that the Consumer Protection Act does apply, and there should be, I believe, more, there should be sort of obligations on both sides. The obligation we look at mostly is payment, because obviously that's what keeps our belly full and keeps our car running and all those sorts of things. So now let's just come back, and I'm going to go over this quickly. The mandate is between the landlord and the agency. It's in the agency's name because the agency is the contracting party. Landlords are normally, going back to the Consumer Protection Act, landlords are normally natural people. And so because landlords are normally natural people, okay, the Consumer Protection Act generally will apply. It's only if the landlord is a juristic person with a turnover or a asset value of more than 2 million rand that the Consumer Protection Act wouldn't apply. And we probably don't deal with most of those. So in most cases, it does apply. So we have this agency. Now, where does the agent come in? The agent comes in because the agent is an employee of the agency. So the agent's license or fidelity fund certificate falls under the company's fidelity fund certificate. So the agent is the person, because obviously if you've got 100 properties, the company can't do anything. So that's where the agent comes in. So agents don't own mandates. And that's another thing that I hear quite often is that the agents left and they've taken their properties with them. It's not their properties to take, I'm afraid. I'm really, really sorry to say that to you, but it's not their properties to take. The properties, the portfolio belongs to the agency, and I think that's very important. Okay, so we're then going to get into the verbal mandates, and now we know only about 55%, I think we said, of the people that answered that poll always do written mandates. So we're going to talk about what is the risks of dealing with a verbal mandate. Elise, before I do that, just checking if there is any questions or anything that have come up in the meantime.
No, the only thing that came up is to ask if this video is going to be available later on. And so that I said to our clients, definitely will make some sort of arrangement.
Okay, okay, so let's talk now about a verbal mandate. What are the disadvantages, or what disadvantages are there to okay, I'm going to call this a non-written mandate, okay? And I think I've alluded to this already. We have the permission, but there's no detail. In other words, there is no, although we think there's an agreement, okay? We think we've got an agreement. The what, the when, and the how has not really been fleshed out. No? Let's look at some examples, for example. You say to the owner that it's going to cost, remember they're overwhelmed when you enter into this mandate with them. You say to the owner, oh yes, you pay a one-off fee, okay? And then they don't realize that's all payable up front. Or they don't realize that it means that the very first month's rent or the first and second month's rent is going to come to you so that you can deduct your fee. That creates a lot of confusion, creates a lot of disputes often. So that's where this, it's the same thing as a lease agreement. A written lease agreement is not required under law, no? But why do we have it? We have it so that we are sure that it's there, it's in place, and everybody understands their rights and obligations. And I believe that in a non-written mandate, you're opening yourself up for potential disputes. And you can maybe comment about whether you have disputes. Maybe if you want to just pop messages to Elise about, I believe, and my experience is that people who don't, or agencies that don't work on written mandates, clarified, gone through clearly whose role is who, end up with more disputes with their landlord, or more landlords that don't understand their obligations, because it's important for us to understand here that everybody has obligations. The landlords, often, unfortunately, A common misconception, to give you an example here, is where landlords think that all you do is collect their rent. Or let's put it this way, it seems to come across that they think that all you do is collect their rent. Why? Because if you don't collect the rent, they don't want to pay you. And because we in our mandate say to them, you pay a percentage on the rent we collect. We forget about all that other stuff we do. Rent collection is one of our jobs, but it's not the whole job. We do an enormous amount of other work. So I think sometimes we inadvertently create that misunderstanding ourselves. So the advantage of a written mandate is that the detail is there. Another example that I've got written down here is upfront rental payment. How do you deal with them? Are they specified in your mandate? If you have this discussion beforehand with the landlord, when you sit down with a written document now and you go through it, you have the opportunity to go through this with the landlord and say, if this happens, then this is how it works. If there's something wrong that affects the tenant's enjoyment of the property, Mr. Landlord, we need authorization from you within one business. I'm being ridiculous now, man. Within one business day, or we have your permission to go ahead. That's what you're giving me. Oh, I'm not going to give you that permission, Mr. Landlord. Then I'm sorry, but I'm afraid this is how we conduct our business, because we don't want our reputation coming into disrepute. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to then contract with you. We've got to also learn to say no. It's not all about yes, 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 and we take on everything, and then our reputation gets tarnished. That's also very important. So, reasons for requiring a written mandate. Your entitlement to payment. Elise said, I made a note here just now. Elise said, time is money. Okay, mandate is money too. Mandate is money, because if you have a dispute with your landlord about money, and you don't have it written, the same way we talk about a lease agreement. Lease agreements aren't required to be written. However, we do them written so that in the case that something goes wrong, it's a worst case scenario insurance policy or something to go back to. Okay, so your entitlement to payment, if a landlord refuses to pay you and you cannot, let's say you end up in a dispute, let's say it's a huge amount of money and it's something that you actually want to take further, the onus of proof is so difficult when you only have a verbal arrangement. Firstly, you've got to prove that you do have a verbal arrangement, but then secondly, you've got to be able to prove that the landlord understood what amount was payable, when it was payable, all those sorts of things, what it was payable for, all that sort of thing. I just don't think that it is worth that when all you need to do is get it in writing. There's some other advantages we're going to come up with from a business owner's perspective that I'm going to touch on at the end, to clarify the roles and responsibilities. Okay, for example, who is going to be taking care of the maintenance, for example? Am I just going to be collecting the rent, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord? Especially the one area that is often a confusion is the procurement portion or the tenant procurement portion of a mandate. Okay, whether it's a management mandate or not, where the agent's responsibilities end and where the landlord's responsibilities start. Who is responsible for what? The other advantage is that we are eliminating misunderstandings and I don't know what's wrong with my lips today. Misunderstandings and disputes. Remember, I spoke about this meeting of the minds, being on the same page. If you've got something in writing, and even if it's simplistic, okay, and we have things written down, then at least you have a better chance of people being on the same page. Having misunderstandings and disputes with landlords is not good for business. Besides that, it takes up so much of your time and you're not earning money. Remember, time is money. So let's invest that time into getting the mandate in place so that our money is guaranteed, or we can enforce the payment if we need to. Okay. Another thing that people don't realize is it's a marketing tool. If you have a decent mandate or a mandate that specifies what you do, and you go into pitch to a client, and the client says, how does this work or how does that work? And I know these days most people want to send things by email and stuff. I'm sorry to say this, but I think the belly to belly, the face to face is so important. You are creating a business relationship here, and you are setting the scene for the whole business relationship. People need to trust you, and they can only trust you when they've actually met you. Zoom is maybe an option, but emails, it creates no relationship. It deep personifies everybody. And I think that's why we often have these misunderstandings, because people don't understand. It's important to take landlords through the details, even if it's a summarized version, that you have, that you say, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, you understand this is your responsibility. This is your responsibility. We will do this here. And then once we get to this point, you need to take over and you need to pay, for example, the lawyer. And we'll get to this later on as we go through. And if there is any reference for disputes or provisions or level of services, your mandate, the written contract, your written mandate is where you go back to solve those disputes. Just going back, sorry, to that marketing tool. Why I say it's a marketing tool is because you can use it to say, this is what we include in our services, but you can also use it to stand out from the crowd. Remember, we're competing with one another, and there's people in here who are in the room at the moment who are competing with one another, and it's important that we stand out from the crowd. So if I sit down with the landlord and say, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, this is how we do it, and I explain it nicely, I am starting to build that relationship. I become a person. They start seeing me as the expert. And when that happens, the chances of me listing that property is so much higher. So what should be in a mandate? Who must do what by when? That's really what it's all about. Let's say you go and you enter into a contract with, I can't think of a service provider now, that you enter into a contract with, but a contract with a lawyer or whatever. That's not a good example. But when you enter into a contract with somebody normally, you make, well, let's take a lease agreement. That's one that we all know. One that we all, I assume, are doing in writing. What does it say? It says who must do what by when. That's what it says. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do by when they're supposed to do it, it says what I can do about it, or the law helps a little bit there, for example. So if you don't pay your rent on time, but now if we don't have that there, and they say, yes, but you said the 5th of the month, or I wasn't sure I have to do this, then we've got to go back to the basics in the Rental Housing Act. So I think it's important that it's very, very clear about who must do what by when. And the next thing we're going to touch on is manage versus procurement, because especially where there's no written mandate, this is often a confusion. Elise, anything? I'm just having a sip, so anything?
No
Uh,
other questions, but
sorry,
I yeah.
just need to see where we are time-wise. Okay.
So no, there's no questions popping up. I usually
Oh,
just say what I love about the writing is in the beginning, people love each other. So it's much easier to get things reduced in writing until you wait people who have a dispute. So that's why it's always better in the beginning.
maybe, yeah, a good example is an anti-nuptial contract.
You
No?
see, you see.
I think that may be a good example. People who do that, they do that because they know they're friends now, they love one another now, but can they get vicious when that love ends? No, that's maybe a good idea. And I've seen landlords get vicious. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, when we're in business, in our professional capacity, we can't really get vicious because it's not good for our reputation. Okay, so I'm just going to, sorry, I've just got another poll here. This is just interesting. Sorry, I'm sharing the results there of something I think. This poll thing is, I'm new to this poll thing there, so please, sorry, I've got to stop sharing them to send you the next poll. Procurement mandates. could you give me an idea of what you include in your procurement mandate and where your procurement mandate ends? I think I've launched the poll there. Just for us to just get an idea, because I think there's a lot of different interpretations of that. So let's just have a look while we're doing that poll at procurement versus manage. When does a procurement end, which is what we're going to get some answers on now in this poll? Do you, for example, do the ingoing inspection as part of your procurement mandate? Do you do the key handover as part of your procurement mandate? Do you do the exit inspection in part of your procurement mandate? And do you invest the deposit in part as part of your procurement mandate? And we'll get those answers now. Why am I asking this? Because I think this is a good example of where verbal versus written can differ a lot. Because if you say to the landlord, the average, I probably shouldn't say average Joe, because maybe there's a Joe in the audience. But let's say we talk about an average person, and we say to them, "Oh, I'm going to find you a tenant. I'm going to a procurement mandate." What does the average person understand out there? I'm not quite sure what the average person understands out there, because I haven't done a poll of the average person. But they probably think you're going to do everything for them up to the point of getting a tenant. And I think often they think that you're going to deal with the deposit too. And I think that often they think you're going to do the exit inspection as well. Okay. And this is an example of why we need it in writing. So let's have a look at the, by the way, you can do multiple choices. I think you can choose more than one in this poll. So you can tick everything that you do or don't do, because I think the poll is going to give us a good example of how different agencies offer different services. So if we don't have it written, how on earth, if we all offer different services and they've just they've interviewed agent number one and we're now agent number two, we might offer something more. We might offer them some more peace of mind. And this is where the marketing tool comes in, is that if we go through a mandate, okay, then we understand that. So I'm just going to, I know I didn't give, okay, half the people voted. I'm going to end the polling. Out of the half the share results, out of half the people that voted, 80% of, you should be able to see the results, I think. I don't know how, but anyhow. 80% of the people do the ingoing inspection as part of procurement. 87% do the key handover as part of procurement. 47% invest the rental deposit as part of procurement. So yeah, we've got a 50-50 split. So this is an ideal example of the landlord doesn't know which agency they're talking to here. They don't know which one's doing that, which one's doing that. They could think that you're doing this, okay? 53% of the people do an outgoing inspection. 50% of the people still do a deposit disbursement for the landlord when it is a procurement mandate. And 30% still deal with deposit disputes for landlords when it is a procurement mandate. My opinion, for what it's worth, is that as far as I'm concerned, the procurement mandate, or in my mind, in the world that I live in, or where I set the rules, my procurement mandate ends at the end of the ingoing inspection. The landlord does not want to pay me for managing their property. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing the advertising for them. But this is where it's important that we have this stipulated. I have reasons why I'll do this, and I'll explain them very, very briefly, because I'm on a very short lead with regards to time here. Ingoing inspection is a requirement under the Rental Housing Act. It's incredibly important to get that done right, to get it documented right, etc. Most landlords don't have the tools or facilities. So that's why ingoing inspection, I definitely include, and I give the inspection report to the landlord, but the landlord needs to be with me, because I'm not the person going to be doing the outgoing inspection for them. My responsibility and my procurement contract, or in my head, in my world, the procurement contract ends after the ingoing inspection. It's the landlord's responsibility to get the property right. It's the landlord's responsibility to do the key handover, because the key handover now becomes moving in. I've concluded that lease for them. I've helped them conclude that lease. That's what I get paid for. I don't get involved in the key handover. This is when landlords must now, they're not abusing my time. Remember, time is money. They're not abusing my time. Why am I not doing the exit inspection? Because then they try and drag me into this thing about, yes, but that there, and you didn't do the main. I wasn't involved in the maintenance during the lease term. I don't know who, and I'm getting bombarded by both sides. No, if they want to, I'm happy to prepare an exit inspection report together with them for a fee and give them the report, but they must sign that report. But I'm not getting involved in any disputes. The other question is investing deposit. Investing deposits cost money. Banking costs money on our side. So if we are going to look after this for them, I believe they must pay us for it. I think we let them get away with far too much, because in the end, this is a business, but we don't value our own time, or we don't value what we can bring to the party. But I generally wouldn't get involved with the investing deposit, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example. We used to. We've got the deposit invested, and now we get to the end of the lease, and the landlord says, give me the deposit, and the landlord and the tenant are ending up in a dispute, and the tenant now says to me, or gets their lawyer to say to me, this is what happened, gets their lawyer to say to me, you may not touch the deposit, we're in dispute. Who do I listen to? What do I do? Now I'm stuck with a deposit in my money, in my trust account, and I have conflicting. If the lawyer doesn't say it to me, I'm fine. I can pretend to be innocent. But if the lawyer says that, and I've got involved in too many of those. Have any of you, just now that we're talking about this, have any of you got involved in any of those sorts of situations where you've been paid up front, you haven't been paid for a cent for 12 months, a cent for 12 months, eh? And now at the end, they want you to start getting you involved in their disputes, and you're getting lawyers' letters, and it's taking time, and you're not getting paid for it. So if you do want to include this, I think you need to get paid for it, in my opinion, okay? I'm going to stop sharing results there so I can see the rest of my screen. So the end of procurement to me is when we get to this point and we've done the ingoing inspection, then my job, in my opinion, is over. So let's talk about some typical things. Oh, Elise, you're going to be chasing me now for time. Eh? Some typical things that should be in your mandate. The very first step normally when you get to a mandate is you're going to be advertising the property. So the very first thing in my mind is an advert is an offer to contract. So in other words, on behalf of the landlord, we are now putting out an offer to people out there who are looking for this property. The problem is, what are the terms and conditions of which we're offering this to the people? The move-in costs, the utilities and other services, what is included, what isn't included, the lease terms, okay, and any special conditions. Do we include this or not? So in my mandate, I require that we need to have this information, because often this is not clarified with the landlord, or we haven't got the landlord to sign off on it. And this is important. So let's have a look quickly at something that I've got here. So, and I will share, I'll share this document. I'll give Elise this document to give to you guys. So included in the mandate format for procurement specifically, well, for anything that I'm going to be doing advertising, I want the landlord to fill out this information. What's the situation with the responsibility for electricity, for the garden, for the pool, the water, etc.? And I want it in the mandate because I want it signed. Because they don't always give me the right answer. But who gets blamed when I get it wrong? I get blamed when I get it wrong. So I want them to accept that responsibility. We've had situations before. It was actually a bit of a mess, but where, for example, certain things weren't stipulated, things like specific garages, specific car parks weren't stipulated, and you end up with a dispute And then the agent is always the person that gets blamed and that's held liable for these things. So I believe that we need to include the T's and C's of the offer you're advertising, because to avoid omissions, errors, misunderstandings, cover your ears, avoid liability. No? That's the easy way of saying of avoiding liability and wasting your time. The more misunderstandings you have and the more issues you have that you need to work through with people. So the more issues you have to work through with people, the less time you have to build your portfolio. But that was the services responsible. Oh, another thing. Oh, big thing. You know, if you do the paperwork first and you get an understanding on everything, your relationship with your landlord is going to be so much better. Services management up front. Now, this is for a managed, okay? Up front, we need to have an agreement with the landlord. Let's say on municipal, I'm just going to look at municipal here. Where are we going to get this, the municipal bill from? If we're going to manage municipal, no? Where are we going to get it from? Is the landlord paying it? Are we paying it from the rent, or isn't this applicable? Then, are we going to bill the tenants and refund the landlord? Now, I know what people do is they do these things little bitty, call people, not professional. Get it in your mandate, get it signed up front. Guys, and we'll go through the questions because I saw one just now about landlords not wanting to sign mandates. You know, to me, it's that thing about us putting the value on what we do and acting responsibly and explaining to the landlords why they need to sign this. And if we do it the right way, I'm convinced that we can get it done. So services, billing and management. Let's have a look at some other important T's and C's. Some misunderstandings that I've been involved in very often. How's upfront rent managed? You know, you don't, all of a sudden it happens and then there's a misunderstanding. How's upfront rent managed? I had a major dispute on that once with somebody because it wasn't in our mandate. And he wanted it. And I said, no, you can only get it every month because it's not due to you until the first of the month. And then they said, no. It's more to me. And I understood their misunderstanding because it wasn't in our mandate. No? And I said, yeah, but this, but do you understand there's the Consumer Protection Act and the tenant can cancel anytime on 20 business days notice. And then you've got to give it back. And he said, no, you don't have to give it back. And then, of course, I didn't want to give it to them. In the end, that ended up at the head office of the organization that I worked for. And in the end, I said, look, I'm happy to do a procurement mandate for you. We'll convert this to a procurement because I'm not accepting responsibility once that money has been handed to you. That's a big one. Whenever somebody says upfront rent, I get nervous. When is commission due and payable? Arrears or management or breach processes and responsibilities. In other words, who is responsible for what steps? Okay, where does the agent's responsibility end and where does the lawyer start? Who pays for the lawyers? And Elise is going to talk to us about Xpello. This is a common thing where I, for example, had landlords don't understand that up to the letter of demand is generally where we go to, because after that it becomes a legal issue. But you know, there's a misunderstanding. I've had occasions where, for example, and I think we should clarify this in our mandate. We're talking about a serious amount of money that's at play here. Let's say average 10,000 Rand a month rental, average 10%. We're talking 1,000 Rand a month, which is 10,000 Rand a year that the landlord's paying for the service. It's 10,000 Rand a year to us, but there's also a value on this for the business owner. There's a value on this for the business owner. So this is an asset for the business owner too. Surely, if you go and buy a house, which is another asset, you want to make sure that all the T's and C's are dotted. If you rent out that property, which is an asset, you want the T's and C's are dotted. Why are we not paying the same attention to our income? Why? So lastly, I think I'm going to have to end here, Elise, is the breaches and the legal action. So agent normally sends out a notice of breach, 7 days, 20 business days, whatever. Now, then the next step would be, generally somebody's in breach, you put them on notice they're in breach, and I'm talking very general here. you put them notice on breach, cancellation, eviction. Okay, eviction is obviously for a material thing. Um, I would only be comfortable doing this part, and Elise is going to touch on where Xpello comes in. I never did a cancellation. I handed that over to legal, and the reason I handed that over to legal is because it's so important that we do the right thing when it comes to this. But once again, I've had situations where I say to the landlord, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, would you like to cancel? Yes, no, we'd like to cancel. Okay, it's now going to cost blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, but you can do it. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't. It's a legal thing and it has too many consequences. No, but isn't that included in yours? Or we're going to eviction, but you're going to have to pay blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, but you must pay that. You must pay that because you didn't collect the rent. Why do we have this misunderstanding? And I can't even go back to the mandate because I haven't clarified it in the mandate. One last thought, Elise, sorry, using your time that I need to go into. Most mandates say commission is due and payable on the rent received. In other words, the rent wat ons invorder, that we collect. Why? I think that's far too old-fashioned. Why? This creates the impression that our job is to collect rent. And this creates the impression that if we haven't collected the rent, we haven't done our job. And this, I believe, is a misconception. Okay? I believe that we've got more jobs to do, and I believe it should actually be on the rent of the contract. There's a discrepancy here if you think about it. Procurement mandate that pay on the value of the contract. So why is management mandate not the same? Because in procurement mandate, where we sit with a situation that pay on the value of the contract, and what happens if a tenant leaves early? We've done our job now, value of the contract. Why are we not doing the same thing on a management mandate? Because we are still working. And the advantages of this would be that, for example, and particularly this came up last year with COVID, if it is due and payable on the first based on the value of the contract, or however we want to define that, and I'm busy working on that at the moment, we define it that way, then I can take my commission first out of the money that comes in. And then people say, oh, but what about the landlord? I'm working. What about me? What about the agent? I'm working hard. I'm doing renewals. I'm doing inspections. But now because the tenant doesn't pay the commission, I can't get paid. I don't think. Oopsie, there goes my earpiece. That must be an indication, at least, that I must keep quiet now. Sure. I hope I haven't confused the hell out of everybody. I think I'm allowed to say hello. Out of everybody.
Sean, there's just two questions that before we proceed. So the first question was the outgoing inspection. Can one charge that to the tenant to pay for the outgoing inspection, or does the landlord have to pay?
Legal opinion, from what I understand, says no, because the tenant, under the Rental Housing Act, an outgoing inspection has to be performed. A joint outgoing inspection has to be performed with the landlord and the tenant. So if you want to charge that to anybody, it's my understanding is you can't charge somebody for something that they have no option about, but you would be able to charge that to the landlord. And there's a lot of these things that we don't charge to landlords that I think we can. And you're the legal person, so you may differ with me. I know that, but I don't believe you.
No, I actually agree with you, and I think the big reason why you then proceed to charge the landlord is because the landlord doesn't want to be there to do the outgoing inspection.
Yes.
So he pays you for your time to be there. I mean, if the landlord wants to be there and the tenant says, well, I don't want to be there, I'll rather pay the agent to do it on my behalf, then it's fine. Then the tenant can pay the agent, but the agent usually represents the landlord. So I can't see why the tenant will per se agree for the agent to represent him.
Sorry,
so I think that's why the landlord pays for it.
Sorry,
yes.
I'm just going to differ with you there quickly. And you said we argue, so let's do it. the tenant, I'm sorry, I cannot take an instruction from a tenant to do the inspection on their behalf when I'm representing the landlord. They must get a friend of theirs to do that rather.
Yeah, but that's why I say that they represent the landlord. So I can't see how the tenant will ever believe even what the agent says, especially if they find things that they have to fix and the tenant doesn't agree.
And just to go on with that, in terms of the landlord, another thing you can put in your mandate. And guys, I'm talking about a lot of things to put in your mandate, but there's a lot of things that get involved here now. A lease, and I haven't got to that point yet because I have to give Elise a chance to talk too. A lease has a value. A rent roll has a capital value. Okay, and I know there's a big argument about how this value gets determined, but let's say simplistically, a lease is worth 10 months rent. So every lease every management mandate you sign on let's say the average rental is 10,000, your average commission is 10%, 1,000 Rand a month. The average value of a lease agreement, a managed mandate is 10,000 Rand based on that. And it could be more. So why, we go buy a car, we want to make sure that, we argue about whether the license is going to be on it. Is it going to have a number plate on it? Is that included or not? You're giving it the stuff and getting the dust off it. But then a thing that's worth 10,000 Rand, we don't want to do it. Probably not a good example, but I hope it's an example at least. Sorry, Elise.
No. I think it's a very good point. I'm just going to quickly jump back. Sean, can you go back to your slide there where you dealt with the cancellation? And just
you want to use my slides now?
Yes, of course.
Oh, my slides must be lekker, né? My slides must be lekker.
I think one of the things, and I sort of just want to remind our clients
my reverse is this one.
There you go. Is that people really use Xpello services if the owner signed up with us. Remember, we do get involved 7 days after the letter of demand is sent. Please remember, I'm not saying the letter of demand should be 7 days. We've just seen that when you send out your 20-day letter of demand and the tenant hasn't come back to you, made an arrangement or, made the payment, then there's a problem. So that's why we want to get involved early enough. So we are there to make the life of the agents better. So please use us in that extent, ccbreach@xpello.co.za so that we can know the letter of demand has gone out and that we can follow up and say, listen, did the tenant make payment or do you want us to be involved? The thing that I've seen in the past that was horrifying is people use the cancellation letter as a threatening tool. So what they'll do is they'll send a cancellation letter, the tenant pays, and then they send the invoice again. So you have a reinstatement, and the thing is, the original lease agreement isn't there because the original lease agreement has been cancelled, and that hasn't been reinstated. So you end up having a verbal tacit agreement. So that's why with Xpello clients, please never ever send out a cancellation letter. If we cancel, we will do it on your behalf. So that's part of the services we give to the agencies that they don't have to worry about. And you know that when we cancel, that is really, we're going to evict and we're taking the process. I also just want to add here is when Sean explains all of those obligations, it's a very good place to say to people that, this is what our service is. And I have to absolutely agree, Sean. I was horrified to see last year how landlords think that agents don't have to be paid because the rent is not coming in. But agents had worked so hard last year. I think especially last year, they had to work double as hard and didn't get the payment. So, that's something to look at. And just a disclaimer, remember, what we are discussing is a guideline, okay? We're not saying everything is per se right or wrong. It has to be the way we do. It's information sharing. So use what works for you. I think that is a very important thing. I don't want people to run back to the offices and go, oh, our mandate is totally wrong. Always place for improvement, but please, it's just things to use. That's the place to even offer Xpello to your landlords. The reason why we say that is because it gives you that competitive advantage. They said, my landlords don't want to sign a more extensive mandate, it is a good option because you can tell them that's how professional it is. I love what Sean is saying. He's saying, how do what extinguishes you between others is you're more professional. So you know what can go wrong. I mean, a lease agreement can be a one pager as well, but it's been extensive because they know what is disputes. So it's part of how you feel about your mandate. If you feel it's too long, if you don't see the value, you won't be able to convey the value to your owners as well. So I think that is one of the important things.
Sorry, if I can add in there, and that reflects how you value what you add, how you see the value that you add to your client and the value of your time. In my opinion, I know that's probably very contentious. Elise, sorry, you were talking about LODs. I just want to point out something, and I'll give this to you to send out to people. Importantly, of course, before they get to you, is they have to have sent the right LOD, and if they haven't sent the right LOD, the process has to start again. And I learned this the very first eviction I did. I learned this the hard way. Okay, when I came in, people had been dealing with this, and they'd done a physical handover of this, and the courts didn't like that because they wanted some form of proof. So I do have an unlocking letters of demand cheat sheet, is what I call it. I'll give this to you that you can send out to your clients.
Thank you, Sean. Sean, so that's a very valuable thing. We'll send it out definitely. Can we quickly look at just a couple of questions that came in?
Yep.
Before we proceed? I just want to go up. So the first question is, should there be a certain amount of inspections done in a 12-month lease? My mandate includes the ingoing inspection and the exit inspection to the tenant, which I will have to change. Some landlords are not happy with only ingoing inspections and exit inspections in a 12-month lease period, but also not willing to pay if exceptions to the lease.
I think landlords have to understand the concept of the user pays, like we all have to understand the concept. An analogy I often use is, do you shop at Woolworths? And people might say yes. And then I'll be like, okay, so you see the value. Because you know you can buy your chicken cheap at ShopRite. And so there's different ways of doing it. You can, if you include it, I think you've got to go back to the value of your time. So if you include it and you charge 11% instead of 10%, that's one way of doing it. I have, Elise, I'm just going to make a note here. There was a report done by TPN, I've said the name, on fees. They did a fee survey. It's about a year and a half old now, but I think it's still it's the best thing I've seen where it shows you feedback from real agents. Okay, I will, as I say, it's an old one, but I'll give that to you, and you can share that with your clients as well, because I think that's because there's another question here that had to do with
what you can charge.
What's a fair fee? I'm going to share that. I also see that that's probably one of the roles that I can play, because I'm an independent person, that if people want that sort of information, I can start collecting that information too, because I'm, just so everybody knows, I'm not involved with any particular agency. I don't practice, so to speak. So one can look at that. The reality is the fees are all over the place. That's the bottom line. But I think if one wants to look at the market, there was that, and there was something else recently. I'll have a look. There was another report that came out recently. I'll have a look, and I'll share that as well.
Thank you, Sean. Sean, do you want to continue?
Okay, I don't have much to continue. This is actually for business owners, etc., out there, because in the end, and I might create some haters now, and I'm sorry if I do, because that's not my intention. Because in the end, we spoke about how the mandate belongs, or the portfolio belongs to. Okay, sorry, portfolio belongs to the business, and so as such, the business owner, I believe, is the person or the principal or whoever is the person that says these are the standards that I want done in my business, and this is how I want it to happen for whatever reason they want to do it. Just going back to non-verbal mandates, something I've just thought about because it was something I posted yesterday or shared yesterday, where Rabosa said that EAAB, you'll find this either on my Facebook page or in the Rent Pro Connect group, that the EAB have now started doing audits of FICA. If you haven't got a written mandate, I'm assuming you probably haven't FICA'd, and that might be the wrong assumption. I'm sorry if I make the wrong assumption, which could be millions of rands of fine. The reality is a rent roll has a value, and part of the reason a business owner takes on this nightmare of rentals, because it's often seen as a nightmare and a problem area of, because okay, rentals is long-term relationship, sales is one-night stands. Okay, I said it. So the reality is the reason a business owner does it is because it has a value. Every lease adds a value to your rent roll. You can sell it. It can be a pension fund, all that sort of thing. But the value is dependent on a number of things. The quality of those. Do you have a mandate, etc.? Because if you don't have a contract there, you don't have a contract that you can sell to somebody else, it means that what you're selling almost has no value. If I say to you, look, I look after that property over there and I have this arrangement with the landlord, do you want to buy it from me? You know, and then you buy it from me, and then that landlord says, oh, no, I don't like your face, man. And he walks away, and you can do nothing. Né? So the value is also dependent, and this is something that is not in many mandates. I'm going to ask Elise to comment on this when we just get to the next part, is that you can increase the value of your rent roll by making sure that your contract is transferable. This is something that I come across that is in very few contracts. The fact that I actually have the authority to sell this to somebody and that the landlord is still bound by it. So it's the assignability or the value of a rent roll. Elise, do you want to maybe just comment on that? The fact that often very few mandates that I've seen have actually said that the landlord accepts that the agency has the right to sell that contract, okay, or to transfer it or to assign it, which means that if I sell it to, if 123 Realty sells it to ABC Realty, and I have that clause, that means that ABC Realty, the landlord is now bound to ABC Realty, and ABC Realty is bound by the terms of that mandate. It clarifies those things too. And yeah, Elise, sorry, can you maybe just comment on that from a legal perspective?
Sure. Sean, I think one of the things that's important to say that, remember, if the mandate is there and it doesn't have that clause in there, and you want to sell your book, technically there's not much to sell, because you can go to the owners and say, listen, I want to sell my book to Sean. For example, I want to sell my book to Sean. If you want to, you can go with Sean. He's going to give similar services to us, or do you want to go to somebody else? If you have the assignability clause included, I can sell my book to Sean, and I can purely then send out a letter to say that, thank you very much. We are now, from now on, Sean will be managing the book. I'm retiring to the Bahamas, so I won't be there anymore. So I think that's the big difference, is where if you have the assignability, you don't have to go ask permissions or anything. And the nice thing is Sean is going to be happy to take it, because if the owner then wants to cancel, remember, there's still the penalty. You can still get that compensation. Where if it's not in there, they can go, no, I don't want to. Therefore, there's nothing to hand over to Sean. So there's not much for him to take over from me.
The only difference is, Elise, is let's say the mandate is with 123 Realty, and ABC Realty buys 123 Realty, and it becomes a portion of ABC Realty. That's different, because that entity has transferred. Okay. But more often than not, it's not because when I advise people in terms of buying and selling of mandates, I'm always cautious of buying entities, because you never know what obligations and things you're buying with it, because people obviously don't tell you everything. So I would normally say, let's just buy the rent roll, okay? because it's simpler that way. And you can comment on that as well. And I'm getting a little bit off mandates, but this is actually the part of mandates that doesn't get spoken about. In terms of the business owner. And, we go through this grief every month, and we run a rental and we invest in a rental for that value that we get at the end. So I normally say we've got to do a very, very serious due diligence on that business if you want to purchase the business. If you purchase the business and it's 123 Realty and the mandates with 123 Realty, owners are bound to 123 Realty in terms of a normal mandate. Now, if we've got verbals here, for the 45% of people that sometimes do it or maybe do it, you don't have that value. I can't see that there's any value with a verbal mandate, because that owner can say, no, but I did it with Johnny because I liked Johnny, and then you got a problem. So the value of the rental is an important one. Sorry, Elise.
No. I think you've got a very good point there. And I think that is value, because people do rentals because it has such a big benefit. Like you say, it's the long-term, it's the steady income. And I mean, that's why with Xpello, for example, we do focus on making the burden part of the managing of the leases less, because that's the part that the people don't like. It's the fighting with the tenant to pay payment, helping or guiding the landlord to do the right things. And if we take that burden off from our clients, they can just grow the book and then do the enjoying part.
Elise, I'm going to ask, sorry that I'm being very forward here, but I suppose I am forward. You probably know me. I'm just going to ask if there's any business owners, or I know there are business owners, that would maybe be interested in us doing a mandate workshop for business owners. Okay, because that's a slightly different thing, where we talk about for business owners in terms of, in detail, we can maybe do a series of it and in little small bites, about mandates, etc. If they can just let you know directly, or let me know directly, I'm happy to do something like that. Or the other thing you'll see over here, I'm happy to help people review their mandates. For example, I'm not a lawyer. Let me just put it out there. I'm not as clever as Elise. I didn't get the degree. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm confident that from a practical perspective, those things that happen, like the upfront payments that everybody jumps at, and then 6 months later when the tenant wants to leave and you've got to get the money back out of the landlord. I often say to people, I'm not cleverer than other people. I've just had more problems, because that's how you learn. So if anybody wants something like that, I think it's now time for us to take mandates to the next level, is really what I'm saying in terms of professionalism. I take this training, and I've got training with another organization tomorrow. There is so much more interest in rentals because of what we went through last year. People now understand rentals give you some money. They don't make you rich, but you can buy some food every month. Even if it's gas to go to ShopRite and you can't afford Woolworths because it's COVID. But I think that's important. And so there's so much more interest, but rentals can be I saw somewhere the other day where somebody said rentals aren't for sissies. Well, I probably disproved that point. But anyhow, the reality is that sissies can do rentals, but rentals is like, there's no landlord in here, I hope. Rentals, when you offer the service, it can be like a Wors machine, a sausage machine, a factory. Now, 99% of what we do has a set way of doing it, because thank goodness Parliament has written it down for us. And so we can write it down, and I've got processes and procedures and things that I can help people with to avoid those issues. And then we only deal with the issues where, because we deal with people who young, they can be funny, and we deal with those issues rather. So I'm happy to help work on that, but I'm thinking that it's now time for us to reinvent mandates and rethink about them, because we've reached a point where people understand our worth, and we understand our worth, and business owners understand the value of that. And now I'm going to try and keep quiet, Elise. Sorry, I'm going to somehow put myself on mute.
No. But I mean, I have to agree with you. The fact that agents actually see their value. I mean, there's been a big drive throughout to standardize lease agreements, to have at least a standard on a lease agreement that certain clauses has to be included. And the mandate has always been dealt with like the little stepchild. Nobody wants to deal with it because agents really go like, I don't want to approach my landlord because I don't want to lose the business. And I think that is the difference, is if you have the confidence, if you can see the value in this, you will not struggle with your landlord to sign it, because your landlord will appreciate the fact that you are trying to protect them. You are trying to set that there's no questions. I mean, the good question was, but my mandate is long and they would rather sign a 3-pager. Yes, landlord, but do they give you as much as you can? Do we offer Xpello to you? Do we offer you, do we set out exactly what we are going to do for you? Or do we say, we will do everything that the act requires? Most people didn't even read it, so they don't know what is entailed. And then everybody's super surprised because now there's a dispute. The landlord goes, you put them in, you get them out. No, landlord, I'm not doing that. I've met agents then that goes and tries to pay the attorneys out of their own pocket. That's too expensive. The owner has to know that that's their responsibility. You don't want to have the responsibility to go and instruct a lawyer and then you have to pay that lawyer. That has to be with the landlord. The landlord has to know that you're his agent. You do 1 to 10 things for him. To take it further, the owner wants you to be able to instruct an attorney, get the eviction paid for, then with Xpello it's easy. Now, of course, I'm prejudicial here because I mean it's an Xpello service, but you have to be clarified, because if you just tell your owner that, listen, I can go and instruct an attorney, what's going to happen is they're going to go, well, you instructed these attorneys, you have to pay them. So always be clear that there's no dispute. Never assume. Assume is the most dangerous thing that you can ever do. I know, like they said in the beginning, be on the same page. Rather be the one going, I know we both think this, but let's just write it down and be on the same page.
An example, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, you want to sign a 3-pager with me, or you want to sign with somebody else because it's a 3-pager. What we're talking about here is we're talking about a 10,000 Rand a month rental over a year. We're talking about 120,000 Rand of your income. Is that not worth us actually making sure that I look after it properly and that we all know what we're doing and that we have it covered? It's 120. This piece of paper here is 120,000 Rand. So if it's only a 3-pager, it's 40,000 Rand a page. Is that worth it? Or you can twist it around and say, this is 12,000 Rand you're going to be paying me. You want to pay me 12,000 Rand for a 1-pager. Would you pay anybody else 12,000 Rand for a 1-pager?
Yeah.
And this is just me thinking on my bum now. I'm quite good at that. I see there's any questions that, Elise, you're in charge of the questions. I'm not even going there because I'm totally confused by the question chats.
No. The biggest thing is that we definitely had a big interest on your mandate training for business owners. So there's quite a couple that came through that said they are interested. And then Lindy shared where she really burned her fingers, where she tried to be nice and went far and behind and paid the contractor. And now the contractor ran away or didn't do all the work, and the landlord is keeping her liable, which I think is terrible. And now, how does she get her money out? It's not your property. You're not getting any benefit of it, and your landlord still most probably gives you a hard time and will still go and badmouth you.
Is that
which is absolutely
terrible. Did you say that was Lindy?
Yes.
Lindy, welcome to my world. Thank you for that point. I often, and I know people take this the wrong way, but people often take me the wrong way. Such a lovely person I am. But when I do training with agents, by the way, I do have a rental training club, which I haven't told you about, but we'll send that out in an email. Not important. Let's deal with this now. I often say to people, when the mistakes come is when you try and be nice. Agents will say to me, for example, oh, but I feel so sorry for those people. They're such nice people. This is that application. I'll say they're nice. Invite them for a braai, né? invite them for a bride. Nice is, I don't need nice people in the house. I need people who can afford in the house. Or they'll say, they'll go out and these are real life things there. The agent goes and helps the landlords find tiles and does the whole not does the whole tiling job, but manages that whole thing. And then they say, my landlords love me, so I'm so good to them. And I say, well, that's nice. Sorry, and I'm not trying to be rude here. That's nice. It's nice when they like you. I say, but how many properties do you manage? Oh, about 15. Well, of course you only manage 15 if you're going to be doing tiling jobs and project management for free, no? This is the point. Or the tenants called, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, the tenant called and they said they've got a problem and it sounds real and they're going to be able to pay next Friday. Can we leave the LOD until then? Yes, next Friday comes, you call, oh, tenant, change the number. This number has changed. This number has changed. We can't be nice. Doesn't mean we must be horrible. We can be nice. We can smile while we press send on the LOD. We can smile when they call us. We can say, oh, I know, you know, this. It's so tough that this company sends out those LODs. I commiserate with you, but guys,
Xpello requires it.
Xpello requires it. The company requires it. The law requires it. Our company policy requires it. This is where, you know, talking to business owners about company policies and how business owners can set them, because in the end, it sets the value of their lease agreement. Because if somebody asks me, for example, I want to buy that rent roll, Sean, can you go and have a look at it for me? And I come back and I say, well, you know, there's 100 properties. I think I saw 5 ficas. What's it worth? It's worth a hell of a lot less than if I go and I say, there's a signed mandate for every single property. There's a signed lease agreement for every single property. There is a FICA has been done on tenant and landlord. All of a sudden, you've got a valuable asset. So yeah, Lindy, unfortunately, it doesn't mean we have to beat them all up. We just do it with a smile on our face. But I've often said to people, you know, I've had tenants who I've had to have into the office and have talkings to, and had to be quite tough with. But I've always explained to them that this is my job. This is what I have to do, and I always wish them a good day when they leave.
Sean, so in our last 5 to 10 minutes,
yeah,
I see you've got the mandate checklist on there.
Oh no, that just had to do with the people, but I you know, Moss, I change my mind all the time now. I replaced that with the fact of maybe doing a workshop, because the thing about mandates is that companies are going to have different requirements for their mandate, what they want to do or don't do. For example, the common ones are procurement versus managed. But then there's companies who also do a rent collection option, which does very well out there. But you've got to make sure, once again, that you get it worded right, and that you make sure, you know, often it's important to make sure that they understand what isn't included. So one of the tricks that I used to use, for example, was I used to have basically a management mandate, and then my procurement mandate was a management mandate with a whole lot of stuff strike through. And people would say, but why do you want to use the strike through? And I'll be like, so that they can see what isn't included. So they can't come to me later and say, but they thought this was included. So I would, you know, I'd have a comprehensive one, and then you can cut it out. You can cut out what you don't want in there, but then I strike through what isn't in there. So they can't come down and tell me later that they thought it was in there. But sorry, there is just 1 or 2 little things, if I may market myself briefly, Elise. If I can get back to where I was. There we are. If you found that Facebook post, guys, and I will, this stupid thing won't let me share that link. Elise, you got that link in your WhatsApp. Do you mind sharing that in the chat so people are welcome to put feedback? I prefer if you don't put bad feedback, by the way, because that's not good for my public persona. But anyhow, okay, Rental Training Club. What I do offer is, and it's less of a chatty thing sometimes. I do offer Rental Training Club subscriptions to teams. It's a subscription whereby you get 2 hours of online training every month. and we can do an upgrade. You know, like McDonald's, we upsell. If you want chips with it, I can't give you chips and I can't give you a Coke. But what I can do is I can host a fully branded rental training portal with your branding on it for a hosting fee every month. That means that your team or you, or well, no, not you, it would generally be for teams or for companies. And that the training starts at 99 Rand per person per month. That's for teams. And for that, you get 2 live training sessions, 1 times an hour, twice a month. And if you want to upgrade to the family meal, then we get you get a branded rental training portfolio, and the hosting fee on that is $4.99 per month. And then you get all the recordings of all previous trainings. And then I am on Facebook. You just type Sean Late, and then you'll see I've got a business page. I also created, guys, for people that have questions, and you know, I created this group called Rent Pro Connect, meaning Rental Professionals Connect, where people I thought would be able to interact with one another. Now we've got 576 people there, but nobody interacts at all. So please feel free to join Rent Pro Connect and to connect and to interact. And Flate, my story is 8. Whistle, my story is finished. I have to translate everything, sorry.
You have
Did
to
I
do
talk
that
too
at
much
each one.
again?
No,
Elise?
not.
Oh.
I want to say thank you, Sean. You know, it's always valuable, your information that you are sharing. What I like about it, it's so practical. There's so many people that always giving training, and you can't always walk out and go, okay, but I need to do 1, 2, and 3.
You know why? Because it's your lawyer colleagues that give training for free, but they just know what happens in Parliament. I know what happens on the streets.
But I think so. Thank you very much for that guidance. We will send out certificates for this hour that it's been attended for. Thank you to each and everyone. Please, guys, use Xpello. If you're not sure if you're using Xpello to its full extent, please contact me, contact Johan, contact Zelda. Let's make sure that you guys are up and running. Use our online portal. It's there. It's free. It's easy. If you're not sure, speak to me, speak to Johan, speak to Zelda, that we can get you guys up and running using it. So thank you very much for everybody's time. We will send out all the information. Sean, again, thank you very, very much.
You're most welcome, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you everybody for spending your time with us. Time is money, but hopefully if I gave you one idea that you can make more money, and that could just simply mean make your life easier and carry more stock. That's making more money. Then I believe my job is done, and we will thank the universe for that. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you. I'm surprised. How many people do we still have on the line? We haven't had half leave, no?
No.
Oh, bless them. I'm always surprised that people still listen to me this long. Thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. We will be in touch. Sorry that I sound confused sometimes and get them a car, but that happens when you're dizzy. And yes, we shall be in touch. I really, really, really appreciate it. And I hope to see you on the Rental Training Club, and we'll talk. I'll speak to Elise about the workshop thingy. It's something that's been going on in my mind for a while. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Chat soon, and we'll let you guys know of our next workshop that we are planning. It seems to me it's going to be focusing on letter of demands. But have an awesome day and keep well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.